Nerd Sports Podcast, where we talk history of the game, numbers, and stats. And each week we highlight a charity that's doing good. If you haven't subscribed yet, then you should, because I'm this the real deal. And you know I gotta shout out the Buffalo Bills. Turn it up to the max, sit back and relax. This the Buffalo Nerd Sports Podcast. Let go!
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Buffalo Nerd. This week, you guys are fortunate enough that I'm joined by another guest, so we're not going to just hear Colt ramble or try to ramble about sports and football for a little while. This week, I'm really actually super excited because you guys know that I like to try to bring on the female voices in sports. This gal that I'm going to be chatting with today is kicking ass in the fantasy space right now, so I'm super excited. We'll get into how cool she really is as we get a little deeper into this thing, or she's giving me faces right now like she doesn't think she's that cool. But this week I'm joined by Lauren Carpenter. I'm not going to rattle off every last thing that Lauren does. She is AKA, as you can see on the screen if you're watching, the Stepmom Lauren. But Lauren, welcome into the show. Thank you very much for being here. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so I am a fantasy football, obviously, writer and analyst and podcaster. The various places that I currently contribute to are the Fantasy Footballers, Fantasy Pros, NBC Sports Edge, and most recently, the Football Guys. So yeah, there's a lot. I do a lot, but I love it. It's my jam.
So if I were to ask you if you knew anything about football, would you say yes or no?
I'd be like, yeah, I hope so.
Just a little bit?
Just a little bit. I like being that person that, when you hear people talking at bars and stuff, and I mean, we live in Florida, so that really never changed. Even during the pandemic, nobody cares. It's just Florida. That's how we roll. So every time I hear people talking, they're usually dudes talking about football. I'm like, oh, and I get involved in the conversation. Very quickly, they're like, you know more than me, and I don't like you. It's like, whatever. It's my job, so boo-hoo.
Yeah, so
boo-hoo on you.
That's right. And that's why I actually, when I mentioned that when I first started, the very first episode, when I said that I wanted to bring on females in sports, because I was like, half the time they know more than the guys do, right? So it's like you start chatting to them and they blow you out of the water and they instantly have to be like, okay. Mm-hmm,
yeah, sure, that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's this girl?
I know.
It's got to be fun for you to at least be able to lay that out on
it. Is, but I hope I don't come off as super oh, she's trying to be such a know-it-all and coming out. I just genuinely really like, to talk to people. And my poor husband, he's had to put up with this for 11 years now. And B, I love football. So those two things combined are absolutely perfect for me. But I do get really excited, and I will go up to random people that I do not know and just start chatting. I'm like, oh my gosh, do you play fantasy football? They're like, yeah, weirdo, step off. I don't know who you are. It's funny.
Yeah, right. I'm actually Stepmom Lauren, and I'm actually pretty big in.
I'm kind of a big deal. No,
I'm kind of a big deal right now. So. No, I can tell just watching you, and I know your partner on the 2-point stance. So that's one of the things you do is Dave Kluge, super humble guy, right? You guys, I watch both of you guys. Neither one of you are people that try to really act like you know what you're talking about in the space, even though you 100% know what you're talking about in the space.
I appreciate it.
It's and it's just that's what I enjoy about watching you guys. Even when I was watching yesterday a little bit, it's just fun to watch you guys chat because it's genuine, it's clean, it's cool. I think you guys do a great job. So anyways, before we get too deep into talking about football stuff, every week on The Nerd, we like to highlight a charity. And obviously this week, Lauren got to choose the charity. So she chose the ASPCA, which is super cool. When she mentioned that, I was like, all right, cool, because she's like, I'm a dog pet person, and I'm like, I have a dog that was a rescue, so this is, a big thing to me. And moving forward with the show, I'm going to be sitting down with charities once a month. And actually today, I'm going to be recording later in the day with the local Buffalo Rescue. That they're going to be the charity that we're highlighting this month.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
It actually kind of all aligns. Yeah, so very cool.
How awesome.
So
this was meant to be. This was meant to be.
Right? So
yes.
You said it, and I was like, all right, that's kind of interesting that it all felt like that, because I'm doing that later today. So very cool. But why don't you tell me why you chose the ASPCA?
So I am an animal person. I love animals. They're kind of like my children. So my Twitter handle is Stepmom Lauren. I don't have any what I call bio children. I have bonus children, which are my stepkids. And so not only do they get all my maternal instincts, but my poor pets do also. But I've been like this since I was a little kid. My mom always told me, she's like, you can make friends with a polar bear. And that means like strangers, but also animals. I love them so much. And they don't have a voice. They don't speak English. They don't have a way to reach out. And there are so many pets that go, not only neglected and abused, but just homeless. And it's really, really sad. And there are, so many families out there that could really use a good rescue dog or a cat, anything that just loves you unconditionally, which animals do anyway. But I feel like rescues really give you that extra thanks and love and just so many wonderful things, especially service animals too. They're great for that industry. So it's really, really special to me. I'm one of those ones that I can't watch their commercials. I start crying immediately. As soon as I hear Sarah McLachlan, I'm like, no, change the channel. I can't do it because I will be in tears. It will be awful. And it's just, but I love the ASPCA and also the Humane Society. So basically any shelter, any animal shelter that's around you. Even if it's just donating a little bit of time or, a couple dollars here and there, or just maybe spreading awareness about it is very special. I've had several rescue pets. In fact, my cat currently is my rescue ferocious feline, and I love him dearly, and he's hilarious. You'd never know he was a rescue. Like a feral stray cat, you'd never know it. But yeah, it's a very special organization. I think they do a really good job. And just animals out there are cool. Animals are really awesome. And they're better than people.
They really are.
No offense.
Oh yeah. No, I think everybody that has animals would agree with that, right? I mean, so we have a rescue dog and we have a cat that's a rescue as well, right? So they, and they're both kind of the coolest things that happen to us, personally, like in our lives and stuff like that, so it's very cool. And like you mentioned, there's so many ways that you can help out with this, right? It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be that. You got time. And the other cool thing about it is there's one in your backyard, I'm sure, right? If you go and you look, there's a shelter in your backyard somewhere, your city, your town, whatever, next town over. There's probably, a shelter somewhere that could use some help, whether it's funding. I mean, I think a lot of them still even do things where you can drop off like
I was just going to say.
Some of that's probably cut down a little bit because of COVID a little bit.
I was just going to say.
I'm sure some of that stuff's still going on too, right?
And even
so there's a lot of ways.
And a lot of these
help.
places, they put on events and, they have these, I guess events. Let's just leave it at events. I don't have to try to find other words for the same thing that I mean here. But just like I said, donating your time, like volunteer and, like hang out and play with, even just playing with animals, not only will help you feel better, but it helps them get socialized. And, it's so important. And especially here in Florida, when we have a ton of hurricanes, we have a lot of people that just leave their pets. It's just the most heartbreaking thing in the world. And like we will literally, our shelters will overfill with animals. And that's really kind of what drew me to specifically a lot of the Florida places around here is because of that. So it's never enough help can be given to organizations like that.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, bringing up stuff like that, I mean, people tend to think about things like that, that's a lot of what really takes place, right? Or just like, you never know, or pets have to get out in the front yard and they never come back, and then somebody has to take care of them, right? And that could be you. Yep. That could be, doing it just through going and helping out at the shelter for a time being, or fostering, doing all those things, even if you can only do it time being. So, of course, like we do every week, all the notes will be in there. In the show notes, you'll be able to find the link. If I would imagine most people know where this one's at, or have your local shelter, that kind of stuff. But it'll be in the notes anyways for you guys to link over. They do have other stuff there too that's resources if you just need help with like training, or you have it all, or you're trying to figure things out too. So everything's there. It's easy to donate. Help out if you can. Should we segue into football
Let's
now?
do it.
Because I'm really curious, even though I heard a little bit of your opinion on a couple of these things yesterday, because I watched your show, and I think a lot of people are talking about the same kind of things. But obviously, the huge news, right, is Julio's number 2 now, I guess, which everybody seems to think it's cool that he's number 2. I'm not really sure why we're massive fans of the single digit thing or whatever on players and stuff, but okay, he's number 2 now. But what happens now? I mean, like, who's the winner of this for you?
The Titans. Just across the board.
Right. I mean, yeah, like it's them and nobody else, right? I mean, that's what
honestly, I
like.
believe the entire organization for the Titans is a winner here. I think specifically, I'm going to point AJ Brown. He is considered that wide receiver 1. Maybe now he's technically a wide receiver 2, but you're talking about a 1A, 1B situation. And what really helped AJ Brown take off was that Corey Davis was taking a lot of these, defenses, and it was difficult to really, figure out what was going to go on with that passing game, even though the offense was going through Derrick Henry, it really didn't matter because there were two weapons, pass catching along as Jonnu Smith. So you take away two options for Ryan Tannehill, and that leaves A.J. Brown, which is wonderful for volume, but not necessarily when it comes to, creating separation, coverage issues. So having Julio Jones there really allows him to, I guess, have a little bit more opportunity that he has shown he can capitalize and go with. And I love A.J. Brown so much. This also helps Ryan Tannehill. So Ryan Tannehill having another huge target like Julio Jones, it's amazing. This also helps Derrick Henry because if they can scheme this a very well balanced, and of course it's going to be a little bit more heavily on the run game because it is Derrick Henry, but when you have a healthy passing game, you have a healthy run game by default, and defenses are going to be a little bit more wary. They're not going to be like, okay, this is just the Derrick Henry show. So this helps the Titans. It helps them win games. It creates this kind of a lethal weapon in this division that is like quite frightening and very exciting when it comes to fantasy purposes because I cannot wait to watch them play this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think people underestimate the Titans are quietly good and they've been good. Like, I mean, they were in the AFC Championship just a couple of years ago. They made the playoffs again last year. They've been good. And that hasn't been with Julio Jones. That's been with A.J. Brown making his name for himself a little bit last year, but it's been Derrick Henry, right? I mean, that's been the show, and they've been able to win like that. So now you're going to get A.J. Brown, who's going into another year where he's shown that he can dominate, right? He can be that guy, and now you're putting Julio across from him. And yes, he's the big body. Corey Davis is a big body too. I get that, right? But this is a different level.
You can't like Corey Davis,
right?
Julio
Jones. This guy does different things. Right? Yeah, this guy does different things, right? And I think the scariest part for me actually is the last piece that you mentioned is now how free is Derrick Henry going to be, right? Because now what are you going to do? Like you're not going to have one-on-ones on the outside trying to fill the box against Derrick Henry. You got to make a move now. And that move could be detrimental.
Exactly.
Because if he gets going, you're in big trouble.
Any
I know
steam.
a lot of people.
You give Derrick Henry any steam. Watch out. Ask Josh Norman. It's just you will be in the stands. He will pick you up and physically throw you out of the stadium and be like, sorry, as he goes by. It's terrifying. And to think how creative that this offense can get with Julio Jones, I mean, it's kind of insane. Am I becoming a Titans fan? It sounds like I am. I am
a little
gushing
bit like
over
you are. You're definitely not going to be a Bills fan after the slight little dagger that was thrown at the Josh Norman stiff arm from Derrick Henry there. I saw he slid that one in nicely. The Bills Mafia is going to be like, Norman,
I do love Josh Norman, though. And one thing I will say just real quick to talk about Josh Norman is he's had a reputation for kind of being a loudmouth. Have we really heard much from him in the last year or so? No. It's really awesome. He's like, no, I'm in football. I'm doing this. Even when that whole play happened, he was just like, whatever, it's football. Moving on to the next thing. I love that.
Yeah, the only thing you hear from him now actually is he was huge in the Buffalo Business Blitz. He was doing a lot for the small businesses in Buffalo during COVID. So that was actually the only thing you're really hearing from him.
Jalen Ramsey can learn from that, by the way.
Yeah, so
just saying.
Yeah, right. There's other guys, absolutely a ton of guys that can learn. I always understand the mentality in the NFL when you're the alpha that you have to act like you're the alpha, but there's ways to be the alpha on the field and understand how to be an alpha differently off the field. And some guys just aren't very good at that.
They should go to the shelter and learn what a real alpha dog looks like.
There it is, right? We could set him up with some shelter time, and he can volunteer and help out. I've been hearing a lot of chatter now that people are like, the Titans are in the Super Bowl mix now, and then a lot of people are like, are you crazy? You're out of your mind? And I'm like, well, how wouldn't they be at this point? I mean, they lost Smith in the middle and things like that, but I'm not sure that really was the way they were going to be moving forward anyways. I think they want to open it up a little more with Ryan Tannehill because he's capable of doing it as much as people don't want to think that he is. Go look at his numbers. He's put up Pat Mahomes type numbers in the past 3 years if you go and actually look at it. Like, nobody pays attention because they look at records, win-losses, but if you go and look at Tannehill's stats over the last few seasons, are very comparable to Mahomes.
Yes,
so this team's dangerous. I'm glad I'm not looking forward to having matchups against Tennessee this year. I mean, and they typically have had our number already. I think there's been a huge changing in the guard with this move in the AFC period. I think but it's gonna be a ripple.
I
It's gonna be
agree.
very
I
fun
agree
to
for
watch
sure.
Let's move to a different conference that's the NFC side, because we got a quarterback battle that's going to take place, or I guess one of them's not a quarterback, or like, yeah, I mean, so we got a quarterback battle that's going to happen in New Orleans, right, between Hill and Winston. Now, I want to know where you stand on this, because everybody's all over the place. Obviously, in the fantasy world, Hill gets like no love. So if you really believe in him, like in some best ball type stuff, he gets like no love. So if you really believe in him, he could be like the biggest winner for you, right? But where do you stand on this? Who's going to be the quarterback in your opinion,
This is going to be really tough for me. I honestly think that this may be a situation where we see both. I wonder how much Taysom Hill is going to move back to his former Swiss Army knife gadget type role, that he's even better now with those quarterback capabilities, that we'll see him in the red zone acting as the quarterback, but we'll see him as a tight end on the field, in between the 20s. And then Jameis Winston is going to be the starter. Either way, it's very confusing when it comes to those two players specifically. But I think what really boils down to this Saints offense is how this is going to affect Alvin Kamara. So Jameis Winston historically has only targeted running backs about 18% of the time in the last 4 years, which isn't a lot. Drew Brees was at 28% because you have Alvin Kamara, right? But when Drew Brees got hurt, I believe it was week 10, and he pulled himself out of the game because he hurt his thumb. It was Jameis Winston who took over, which was really weird that Taysom Hill played the next 4 weeks, but it was Jameis Winston that played the remaining 34 snaps. And he had 10 attempts, I believe, and 6 completions in those 34 snaps. But 4 of those completions, I should say, were to Alvin Kamara. So he kind of moved away from what we classically knew of him in Tampa Bay. So this doesn't necessarily portend anything horrible for Kamara if it's Jameis Winston, whereas I know a lot of people are upset about that. And then if you look at the Taysom Hill side when it comes to him being the quarterback, you look at what he was unable to do with Kamara that Winston was able to do in 34 snaps. It took Taysom Hill 3 weeks to get there, until finally on, I think the last thing was week 4. Don't quote me on that one. I believe it was the 4th week that he was starting, week 14, maybe 13 or something like that. Then he got Kamara 10 targets, and then they started to get rolling, and then Kamara started to do a little bit better in fantasy. But Taysom Hill is one of those guys that relies on his legs, and I think that was mostly for safety when he was, first becoming that starter, because I think he was a little nervous. He had some duck passes that were pretty bad, so he got it together. So that shows me that, okay, he can get it done. Now, what does this mean as a whole? What are we talking about for fantasy? This is definitely going to drop Alvin Kamara down a little bit, but he is an elite running back, no question about it. He did finish as the RB1 last year. It was a hot mess of a year. We didn't have Christian McCaffrey. We barely saw Saquon Barkley. Ezekiel Elliott, just what happened to you? You have fingers and hands. Try using them when you're running with a football. So, I mean, it was bad, but that helped him finish really high. And before, if Drew Brees wouldn't have retired, then his draft stock, he'd probably be the 101 or the 102 right behind Christian McCaffrey. I still think he probably should be. But you don't necessarily have to worry about that, because I think he will fall probably 4th, 5th, 6th pick in the first round. And I think that's where he needs to be. I don't mind trading for him. If you're in a dynasty league, it's still going to be pretty pricey. He is Alvin Kamara. But a lot of people are really worried about it. I am not as much. I am more worried about Michael Thomas, because we still don't have a solid wide receiver 2 for the Saints that can do a A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, if we're going to go back to our previous team, is really going to have that 1-2 punch, be able to confuse defenses. I mean, Alvin Kamara is basically their wide receiver 2. I mean, I think he led the team in targets. I mean, Michael Thomas was also hurt. He only played 8 games or something. So it's tough, because Jameis Winston is a turnover machine. Taysom Hill's a runner. So it's kind of tough. The Saints are going to be interesting this year. And that division in the NFC South is going to be, I think, up for grabs, especially with this new change. Speaking of Julio Jones, this new change that we have with the Falcons. And then Tampa Bay is coming back. I mean, their entire team is back. And that, from a Super Bowl win. I mean, that's a lot of momentum that's going to be hard to slow down. And the Panthers, okay, they have Sam Darnold. Sorry, Panthers fan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that to me the division does feel a little up for grabs in that aspect as well, no matter who it's going to be, because I think the Saints still have a good defense. I think they're still going to have a good game plan. Mm-hmm. They understand how to win in their division, right? And so they got Atlanta, who I'm not sure that they know what they're doing right now. I mean, they're not showing me that they know what they're doing by, getting rid of one of the best players in the league. I get maybe you need to make a transition, but while you still got your
I'm
old
worried about
quarterback
Matt Ryan
there,
for
I'm
that
not sure
reason.
that
Yep.
the transition was to get rid of the wide. Yeah, why get rid of the wide receiver? Maybe it was just time to move on from your $45 million quarterback and try somebody different with these outstanding wide receivers that you have. And now this kid that you drafted is the highest tight end's gone, in a long time, and your defense is still
so I
the
didn't mean to
same as it
interrupt you
was
there,
last
Colt.
year.
I'm sorry. I just want to
Right,
make sure I
so
say this before I forget. This is what worries
Go
me
ahead.
about everyone is so excited about Kyle Pitts. And you always have to remember that, yes, he's a unicorn. He's a freak of nature. That there's no argument there. But rookie tight ends really struggle in the NFL. And it's not their fault nor lack of talent. It's a completely different world than it is from college, obviously. I'm not saying this like from experience. Obviously, I didn't play in college or the NFL, obviously. But I'm saying this from a historical perspective. So it's really hard to get rid of someone like Julio Jones and then have Kyle Pitts be like, but we have Kyle Pitts. You still also have Hayden Hurst. Are they going to go to like a 2 tight end split here? What, is Calvin Ridley going to have to shoulder all of this by himself? Which
Right.
he can. He has proven that he can just gobble fantasy points without Julio Jones. So I'm not necessarily as worried about that, but it's weird. It's going to be I think it's going to be a mess. I hope it's not for all my Falcons friends out there.
It does feel super weird too, because even Hayden Hurst, he was an early pick for them. That was not a just wasted draft pick. I mean, they took him.
Well, they got
fairly
Hayden
early on,
Hurst
I
from
believe,
the
too, so
they got Hayden Hurst
invested
from the
heavily
Ravens. Yeah.
in this tight end position. Oh yeah, from the Ravens.
Yes.
He got
Yes.
drafted like first early from the Ravens and then traded to them. So he's a young tight end too. So I agree with you in that aspect. Like, what are they going to do there? And then the backfield. I mean, Mike Davis looks like he's going to be able to run, right? But what does that mean? Like I'm not scared of your backfield at this point either, right? So what am I scared of on your team that's going to make me just be like, well, just double the Pitts kid and double the Ridley guy, and we'll see if anybody else on the field can beat us, which I don't think they can because Matt Ryan's not running anywhere. What are we going to do, right? Like, yeah. And I actually think at this point, Carolina is way better than Atlanta. I mean, I feel like they're trending in a complete opposite direction. Like they're going to be a team to contend with in the division in the next couple of years, I would say. Well, we're going to find out with the Saints what's going to happen with their quarterback.
The division's
situation.
wide open.
They might be coming right back down. And Tampa's brought them all back, but they won a Super Bowl, yes, but they weren't that good in the regular season. Right, it took them time to care.
To actually learn the playbook.
Time to care enough.
Tom Brady
to start playing right as a team. Yeah, it took him a while. So another guy I want to chat with you about, because it's another division that's always up in the air. But he was killing it before he got hurt. He's got a trio of great offensive players around him. What does Dak Prescott do for you? Because personally, I anti the Cowboys as a team. But I'm not scared.
I love, and I don't blame you.
You're a love.
It's either like you love the Cowboys or you hate the Cowboys if you're a real football fan. And if you're a fantasy football fan, it's more like I dislike the Cowboys, but I'll stomach them. You know what I mean? And you kind of have to do that. Yeah, I completely understandable.
Well, especially with Jason
Garrett. I get that. But so I like Dak Prescott coming back. Hopefully he stays healthy. That's obviously going to be a big question mark here. But they really didn't do all that much to improve their defense so significantly that it's going to show me that their defense is going to be so competitive that they're not going to have to score a lot of points to win. They will have to continue to score high point totals, which means high fantasy points for these stud players like Dak Prescott and like Ezekiel Elliott, who I think is going to have a bounce back year as well. Like I said before, at least maybe he grew some hands and fingers in the offseason so that he can hang on to the rock. That'd be helpful. But yeah, so you have CeeDee Lamb, who's going to be in his second year. Michael Gallup, I think, is going to do great with Dak Prescott. They have a lot of chemistry going in. So there's lots of things going on here for the Cowboys that it makes me very excited about Dak Prescott. Now, what I am concerned with is where he's going in the draft, because I usually like to wait on my quarterback, depending on the league. So if he's going a little too high, I might have to pass just because I need other position groups higher than I would that quarterback position where Dak is going. But if he continues to fall, or if he does start to fall, because ADP is everywhere right now, because it's the offseason and we're looking at dynasty and we're looking at all these different things. So where I feel comfortable with him is preferably 6th, 7th round or later, and I don't think he's going to fall there. So I doubt I'm going to have Dak Prescott on any of my leagues, but if you have a keeper and you have that choice with high quarterback scoring, he's someone I would not mind hanging on to. But I'm excited about him and what he brings to the entire Cowboys offense from a fantasy standpoint, not for real life. I have a lot of Eagles friends.
That's the other piece of this for me that is that I question a little bit is I feel like at least two of the teams in the division have phenomenal defenses. I think the Giants have a good defense, and I think that Washington is just a great defense, and they are like super scary. So that's where I have a little bit of trouble with Dak, but also it's mostly just my hatred for the 2 Super Bowls that they beat us in back in the day. But anyway, I find it hard to not get him, but I think I agree with you. I don't tend to go after the quarterback high enough. I think to go get Dak Prescott is kind of my thing. And I think if I was going to go high enough, there's somebody else that I would probably chase at that high of a point than him. Mostly because I don't like Mike McCarthy either, even though I think that
but he smashes
he's just kind of blah. And I'm curious to see what they did because, like you said, I don't know what they did.
Yeah, super hardcore.
Yeah, I know. He's so hardcore. Yeah, he's so hardcore. When one of the best franchises in football lets go of their head coach, I don't think you stand in line and say, "Yeah, come over here, right?"
He didn't he also lie in his interview? Yeah, like he blamed, and then he admitted it. Like what?
Yeah, like I have a hard time with him, but I do think that Dak has all the skills to do it, and he's got, like you said, CD should have a great year, Gallup should have a great year. The tight end position's a little up in the air for me on that one.
Jarwin.
I've heard the Schultz side of it. I heard the Jarwin side of it. I don't really care either way. Yeah, I don't think I'd be there either way. I don't think they're a team that I'd be targeting in that position necessarily, unless I have to. But he should have a bounce back year. I don't with Zeke behind you. Even if he does sort of what he's supposed to.
And so the way that I look at it is, I would love to have Dak Prescott on my squad. There's no way around that. But in the 6th round, if I can get myself a solid RB2 flex or a wide receiver 3, I may take that because there are other quarterbacks that I would like to have on my roster. Speaking of Washington, Ryan Fitzpatrick is one of them. Another one is Carson Wentz. He's pretty low on the totem pole as well from rankings that I have seen this early, which is still June. So, I mean, he's got a better offensive line. He's got actual weapons around him. And he's back with Frank Reich, so hopefully he can stay out of his own way and stay out of his own head. And I think that will produce fantasy points as well. So that's what I don't like about it. Like sometimes I'm in this one league where our quarterbacks score ridiculous amounts of points. I'm talking about 70 points and above just for your quarterback. So they're the first ones off the board. I like that because I can just be like, good, I'm done. Yay. Then just worry about everything else after that. Instead of playing that waiting game.
Good.
See, can I wait one more round? Can I wait one more round? Sure. I know, me too.
I always wait one too many, right? Because I keep waiting and I'm waiting and I'm like, yeah, I'll just take this guy. And then it get there and I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine with this guy. And I move myself down and then I move myself down again. And then by the time I look up, I'm like, why is Sam Darnold here and nobody else? Like what just happened to me?
I may have said that exact same thing.
I mean, he might pull it off
with Sam Darnold. It did not work.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. I've kind of thought he could pull it off the past couple of years too, but being that
then he got mono
there, I always thought it was not really possible. But in this situation he's going to, I think he's in a much better situation to actually potentially succeed. And at least get to throw the ball around.
You dump it off to Christian McCaffrey and you got yourself a touchdown. Come on, easy peasy.
You got the best back in the field. I mean, like, how many touchdowns is he going to get when it is just a screen pass? And
I'm sold.
He's going to get an 80-yard touchdown because McCaffrey does all the work.
Points in the bank, baby.
I mean, that's what I'm doing, right? That's what I'm saying, right? Yeah, points are points. Yeah, points are points. So let me ask you, if you get your one guy
this is
right
so
now,
hard.
Anybody that you want, who you taking?
Oh, this is not okay. I should not be saying this, but it's not okay. I've planted my flag on this guy. I am not going to go with anyone obvious, like Travis Kelce. Nay, I will not do that. 2 players I am really trying to choose between. But you know what? I'm going to go controversial. I'm going to go spicy, Colt. I'm going to do it. I'm planting my flag and I'm taking Logan Thomas. Tight end for Washington. Yes, I love Logan Thomas. I love him to death.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm obviously super familiar with him, right? He was a Bills guy for a little bit there, and we let him go to Washington, and then he just excelled magically, as soon as he became a tight end instead of whatever we were trying to do. I mean, he was playing a little bit of tight end. He was just buried on the depth chart at that time, but I've heard a lot of back and forth on him. Yeah, initially, Virginia Tech quarterback, yeah. So he actually, I've heard back and forth a lot on him. So it's funny that you say it. Initially everybody was like, yep, that's the guy, and then I've heard a lot lately like, no, he's not the guy. It's going to be just a one and done. It's going to be a one and done. And I'm like, Fitzpatrick is going to hit. I mean, we saw Gesicki start to excel when Fitzpatrick was in there. I don't see how Logan Thomas isn't going to excel, especially when he's got good wide receivers running around on the field with him now, too. I mean, McLaurin is a stud. He's going to be a stud. Fitzpatrick is going to sling this ball around, whether he's going to find a way, and he likes big targets when he gets near the end zone. I find it hard to believe that he's not going to be relevant, especially in a position that nobody's relevant outside of like the top three, right? Like, so
it's so stressful.
I mean, the tight end's the dumbest position. It's getting to the point where I almost feel like we should swap out offensive line for tight end, because they would be able to like get pancake blocks and stuff, and we'd be able to get probably more of those in a game than we would out of half the tight ends in the league right now.
You brought up the Gesicki argument.
I like that. That's a good one.
How people were so excited about Gesicki with Ryan Fitzpatrick in Miami, but they're not excited about Logan Thomas with Ryan Fitzpatrick at Washington. It doesn't make sense to me, because Logan Thomas, just like Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas got it done. Whoever was at quarterback, there were 3 different people who played quarterback for Washington, and he was able to be successful on a team that struggled. He was able to come down with the football, get you fantasy points, and he was rather consistent about it, as you said, at a dumpster fire of a position that is incredibly thin, and it's hard to come by. I like Logan Thomas. I like him a lot. Now, I've heard the argument that Curtis Samuel being with the Washington football team is going to take down his target totals. That is definitely possible. But I believe that Logan Thomas is going to continue to be that red zone, end zone target for Ryan Fitzpatrick. And Terry McLaurin is also going to ball out. I do not think that Curtis Samuel is going to be that one that takes away all of this volume from both of these players. I think they're going to use Curtis Samuel creatively, kind of like they did with the Panthers a little bit. He's going to be involved in pass catching, but he's also going to be involved in the run game, which I find very interesting because they lost Jerick McKinnon. So, wait, was McKinnon with Washington or with San Fran? Shoot, never mind. Either way, they do have Antonio Gibson, who I do love. But I think it's still there. So he's kind of, but I don't know. It's a gut check.
But that's it.
Exactly. It's like a gut check for me. I don't have a lot of analysis enough to speak to Curtis Samuel, only other than what my eyeballs have told me and what my gut's kind of telling me about what his role is going to be on the offense. Because of what I saw last year between Logan Thomas and between Terry McLaurin, and what I believe they can do again this year from a stable quarterback. Actually, Ryan Fitzpatrick is not stable. He's crazy, and I absolutely love that. How about a consistent starting quarterback who's going to go out there and sling it and not care, even if his head's getting ripped off? Yeah, he's going to be the one to provide those opportunities. How are they not going to succeed? Even if a fewer targets, okay, whatever. I still think that they're going to be successful in this, and I'm in. I'm all in on Logan Thomas.
Right. I think the big change this year too is going to be that if there's one offense that didn't do that great last year,
they crushed it
because of the quarterback. This defense gets them the ball all the time. I mean, they are going to have opportunities to get the ball back immediately. This offense, if they start to score like they couldn't last year, they're going to put teams in such a terrible position that they're going to have to deal with that pass rush legit every single play trying to make a comeback. Fitzpatrick's going to have tons of opportunity this year. When he did his little, did you see the?
Oh, I missed that. No,
thing he wrote.
I need to go look for it
on the chalkboard. Did you see that Washington did that? Oh, you need to go find that on Twitter. So they did kind of like how you would first day of mini camp, like you would at kindergarten. They're like, "Hi, my name is," and this, I'm this tall, and this and whatever. And so Fitzpatrick did his, and he's got like a mean mug face or whatever.
Dude,
right?
He should have been in the conversation every year.
Could Ryan Fitzpatrick be the MVP this year?
I love him. I agree.
I mean, he could legit. He's got this is the best team he's had, I think, in a while offensively that he's going to get to play with.
Oh God!
So I'm excited to see what he can do. And that division's always in shambles a little bit, right? So I mean, it's going to be fun.
Oh wow!
We get in week 17. He'll come back to Buffalo. In week
I just had a premonition.
Season, so
I know
it'll be kind of cool.
Inevitably,
because
I'm in a lot of leagues, I will have at least one league that my roster is Ryan Fitzpatrick, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and Antonio Gibson. I would not be surprised if I do that kind of on accident. It would be just the Washington stack. Crazy. But that sounds like a great lineup.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's very possible. I mean, you could legit see, though, that they could do it. Yeah, they could pull it off, right? I mean, you're getting probably 3 touchdowns, and somebody's getting over 100 yards.
I know I'll do it. I'm going to screenshot it for you, and I'm going to send it to you and be like, Colt, I did it.
I don't know.
One
I don't
too
know that
many
I'll
Tito's.
do it,
Dang it.
Here it is. There it is. There's the team.
No. It won't be the kicker.
It'll be
their
defense. Finish it off with the kicker, too, just so you can a little
you know what I mean? It's going to be just all Washington.
There you go. Just to tap it off right at the end. Be like, I'm just rolling the whole team. And just play them only.
But wouldn't that be, that would work?
Oh my God. Should I do this in a league? And you'll probably dominate.
Just to try it?
That's like 6 wins. Yeah.
I'm at least.
Just to try it.
Come on, I just need one more to get in.
That could potentially be 6 wins.
Oh my God.
You don't need that many more to get into the playoffs.
I really might do this.
Right? Yeah, so you could be there just with Washington. Just try it. Do a little research to find out. So speaking of that, moving into the fantasy a little bit more. Real quick.
I'm a redraft girl. I am in a few dynasty leagues,
redraft,
but
dynasty,
I'm far too
where do you
instant
fall the most?
gratification to really excel at dynasty, because they're like, oh, I'll give you, someone good. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. For a first round pick, I'm like, sold, and then the next year I'm like, oh, I don't have any picks. I don't do well with dynasty. I'm a redraft girl. And plus with dynasty, if I
now what am I going to do?
Poorly, or if I have drafted like rookie poorly, I have to live with that for a long time. With redraft, I'm like, there's always next year. You know what I mean? I don't have to like rebuild from scratch and be like, how do I prioritize my picks versus whatever? Yeah, right. It's like, oh my God, that takes so much work. Exactly. I'll draft a new one next year.
Well, that team sucked. Oh well. Good thing I have 25 others. Yeah, no big deal. So if you're going into redraft, what's like your go-to strategy that what's Lauren's thing? What's she really like? I mean, there's the running back guys. I mean, obviously it depends on
strategy
your point
is
system,
the Bruce
changes
Lee
things
strategy.
A little bit and stuff
it
like
is
that.
Called
but what's your go-to strategy?
So you have to be as fluid as possible in every single draft, because every draft is going to be different. So what I really like to do is do what they call tier-based. And I like to have a pool of guys that I know I predict are going to have similar points towards the end of the season, right? So it's not that one particular guy, it's that guy who can have a similar amount of points. And I have those guys based in tiers. This is fantasy footballers have this tier-based construction in their ultimate draft kit. Plug, hey, they do write me a paycheck. So, but it is, for real. I've used it ever since they came out with it, even before I worked for them. It is incredibly powerful. And that's what I do. I bring that tier-based system with me in my drafts. And actually it's on an app now, which is super cool. But if you miss out on a guy, you avoid that draft tilt. And if you've ever gone through the draft tilt, it's real. The struggle is real if you miss out on your guy. But hey, if you miss out on him, it doesn't matter. There's another guy who's in this tier of similar fantasy points that they're going to score. So at least you can have that going for you there. So it's a combination of being as fluid as possible, because there's going to be some drunk dude who's just like, Aaron Rodgers, like first round, you know what I mean? And like that literally did happen last year. It was hilarious. So you're going to have those where someone just picks someone silly the entire time. So you've got to combat that, which is being fluid, making sure you're not married to a strategy, you're tier-based. And then also I do like to do a roster construction. So I want to make sure I've got consistent starters at my quarterback, running back, wide receiver, hopefully wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, if I can get lucky, and my tight end. Once I have those guys that are my solid core, then I can start to be a little fun with it and then mess everyone else's draft up, because then I'll start to do fun stuff like reach and do things silly. And, then I kind of like to do that if the draft allows me to do so. So I try to be as flexible as I possibly can. Sprinkle a little bit of subterfuge in there. I'm really good at that. In fact, I bought everyone several rounds of shots in one league that we had, which is our like bar league. I bought everyone shots, like 4 or 5 rounds of shots. And like, I would pretend to take mine, but then like, I did the Coyote Ugly trick and I like spit it into my beer without actually taking it. So everyone is hammered and I am totally sober and kicking butt. And that year I had Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, and George Kittle, and Drew Brees was my quarterback in a redraft 12-person league. I got everyone hammered. I know. I'm not above that. I will do it.
Oh,
You gotta do what you gotta do, man. It's an
That's the
entirely
strategy.
male bar league, and they're all older, and they're all arrogant, and they totally
you gotta
think
do
that
what
they're
you gotta
better
do
than
to
me,
win. I
or they
mean,
don't take me seriously.
It's important.
They learned their lesson. Watch it. I sounded very scary. I swear to God, I'm not a threatening person.
I like it. I mean, girl, you did. I noticed this actually. It's funny that you did that because I noticed yesterday during your show you were saying Dave had asked you something and you answered it, and you can tell that you're the mom because you went with you were like, "Don't you dare!" You got the finger out like you know what this means, right? You know, it's like, "Don't you dare do that." You just point at them and they know,
there.
right? Like,
or if I'm like,
I saw it
2
come
more
out
sleeps
yesterday, and I
until
was like,
football.
there it is.
Oh, mom phrase.
That
Check.
mom order right there. Check. So I really do enjoy listening to everybody's kind of like strategies about how they attack things because I've tried some different things. You know, I've done the running back. I went through the stretch where it was I did quarterbacks in round 9 and 10 back to back, trying to take 2 good quarterbacks, and then just went each week trying to figure out which quarterback to pick and being completely pissed off at the end of the week that you picked the wrong guy. But so this season so far for all of I've only done best ball type of stuff, but I've went in with 0 people that I want.
No, I like that. I like that.
I'm like, I don't even want anybody because I'm going to be disappointed when I don't get them, right? If you don't get 1-1 and you get McCaffrey, right, after that, it's kind of just like, okay, I mean, I got to see who's there when I'm there. Yeah, let me see when I'm there. I'll decide what I'm going to do. But so far, I can't admit I have been using the tier-based system from the draft kit because I did do the early bird buy-in. It is like way cheap right now if you want to go over there and get it. And it is a lot of data. And like she mentioned, it's on the app now, which is super cool because I really enjoy that you can go in there and you can like highlight players that you're looking at, right? And
it's so
guys
helpful.
That you want to avoid
so
and
helpful.
like all sorts of stuff. And you can get rid of all of them before you even go and start drafting.
I'm going to jump into answering a question you were going to ask me in a minute. That's actually my an article I will be coming out with this week, possibly early next week, is I'm actually reviewing and going over all of the research tools of the UDK and basically breaking down how to use them as an analyst as well as a fantasy player. The strength that is in it is unbelievable, the amount of information that you can find in here. So that is something I'll be coming out with this week. For the ballers.
That's awesome because that is, I mean, it's a
they have stuff for that too.
Is like, I mean, if you're serious, like if you just want to have fun and pick names and do that, and hang out with your buddies and just have it be, I mean, there's ways to do that. Yep. They'll give you a lineup if you need a lineup. There's tools in there that will literally just give you a lineup and you can go just plug it in, right, and do your thing. So it is super cool, and that's what I've been using so far. So my only battles so far has been figuring out. Like if I'm in tier 4 for my wide receiver, but I got a tier 3 tight end still, and it's it's like the tier jumping is like the only kind of like
that
I've had to
that's
kind
where
of deal
I bring
with
in my
roster-based player that I don't
approach
want.
while using tiers because
just jumping around.
You're like, oh my god, but there's this guy available, but I have no tight end, I have no RB2 yet, and then I'll go back and look at that tier and what's going on in that tier as well. So that takes practice and it takes a little bit of feel, but it's really about what you are most comfortable with in your draft, because the last thing you want to do is have guys on your team that you don't want. Then it's not fun. Getting hammered.
Right. Absolutely. So
don't get hammered.
What would you say is one thing you absolutely have to avoid?
That's true. Avoid me at all costs.
Or we
once.
Found out doing a draft with you.
That only happened once. Several years
avoid
ago.
drafts with Lauren.
I also lost.
Yeah, because you will be hammered and your team's going to be terrible. So
yeah, it was terrible.
So no.
Yeah, it is. Whatever.
Oh yeah. I mean that's just how the fantasy is, though, right? I mean, you can feel like you've done all the right things. I've heard like recently, like there's some people that have kind of been.
I don't ever want to say absolutely no to any kind of research, but I also don't want to be like, okay, it's 100% correct. There's always, because we're guessing. This is what fantasy football is. It's educated guessing. So I like to use a healthy mix of everything. So I look at projections. I even sprinkle in a little bit of strength of schedule in that too. Another thing I would avoid doing on your draft is what I said I was going to do with Washington. Don't have too many players from one team on your squad. Try to be as diversified as you possibly can. That just saves you a headache, if anything, on your bye week. So there's things to pay attention to. And speaking of bye weeks, having an understanding of your bye week, but don't let it force you to avoid taking a player simply because they have the same bye as maybe another wide receiver on your team. What you can do is later on in that draft, or keep your eyes open on the waiver wire, but you can go ahead and pick somebody up that you know is you can plug in if you want. Again, that's usually what the waiver wire is there for, or trades are there for that. So, I mean, my biggest one is just don't get hammered. Unless you really want to, and then it's like a whatever draft, then fine. But I've learned from experience.
That was definitely what you just mentioned was the thing for me there for a while. I battled with that for a little bit of trying to avoid the bye weeks early, right? Like, because you rounds 2 and 3, you're like, but this guy's a stud and this guy's a stud. Yeah, but they have the same bye week.
Every player has bye weeks. There are going to be people in your league that are dealing with several bye weeks, and that is actually a place where you can capitalize as a league mate. When someone is dealing with half their team, that's an exaggeration, let's say 4 or 5 guys, maybe 3 guys that are their starters, they need someone. You've got someone on your bench, but you want, this is when that trade happens, and you can be like, boom, what's up? And then you've helped each other in a trade. Always keep the sanctity of the trade.
Right.
Genius.
I've actually done that where right after the draft, I went through and I looked right off the bat to see what teams messed up and did that, where they got like 3 different guys on the same week, and I started just paying attention to see what they were doing early in the season.
That's so much fun to watch,
especially if their team's like kind of struggling in the beginning,
especially like when somebody else
need a win coming up.
Like, that's another tip also, is do not be afraid to draft the insurance guys. We used to call them handcuffs. I prefer using insurance guys. Don't be afraid to draft them, even if their starter isn't on your team. If anything, you now have a starter. If that player gets hurt, let's knock on wood, we'd ever want to, hope injury on anybody. Or you immediately have some of the most lucrative trade asset is the word I'm looking for there. You have an amazing trade asset that you can go ahead and usher in there. So that's something I like to look for later in those later rounds. Once I have the meat of my team, I'm like, who can I pick up that people are going to want later?
Right.
Yes, I could see that happen. I would prefer not to, but if it does fall that it happens, that's okay. And the reason why is because they have 2 completely separate identities, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
Nick Chubb is going to be that explosive, big-time, ground and pound line from scrimmage guy, and Kareem Hunt is going to be your explosive PPR campaign. Now, I wouldn't suggest doing this, but if that's how it falls, not the end of the world. Are we really? Oh my God. Listen to me. Just yap.
Got it. All right. we're getting pretty close to our hour here. I want to jam through some things for you. Yeah, we're good. We're good. This has been good so far. But this is a Bills-centered show, so I want to get your opinion a little bit on the Bills here. So I'm going to run through a couple things with you. I'm going to give you an opportunity to draft a Bills running back in your fantasy league. It's Moss, it's Singletary, or none of the above.
Give me one for me, thanks.
Going to draft? None of the above.
Yeah.
QB1, RB1. Yeah, QB1, right? So that tends to be the common theme, I think, for most people right now. It's so hard to determine. This is actually the one thing that I've been thinking about writing about, right? But I was like, I think everybody else is going to do this. But there's 3 backfields that I love, but I know that I don't want any part of them because they're all high-powered offenses. They score a lot of points. They're on the field a bunch.
See, I would write about it anyway because you'd be surprised how many people may either change their opinion or have a different insight simply because you may bring a different tone of voice or a different perspective to possibly the same argument. And you may uncover some data that previous people who have written about it haven't even thought of yet. So go ahead and write that. If that's something interesting to you, do it.
Right. To me, this is one of the backfields. You can't wrap your head around it. I mean, and even if you look at the numbers don't seem to change, right? I can't look at this and say, I can add 1 game in, right? That's obviously going to happen, but I can't look at this offense right now in the Bills backfield and be like, unless one of them just completely disappears, I don't see one of them like completely excelling, and we don't run the ball a ton. Brian Dable just came out yesterday and said, we just need to be efficient at running the ball. We don't need to run more. We don't need to we just need to be efficient, right? This team doesn't have any ideas about just being a run first team. So I have a hard time with this back.
He's a stud.
So let's move to besides QB1, because we know everybody wants him because he is turning into the man now, but he's way too high for my reach. I've done it in one league where I just went right off the bat, and I'm like, I'm just going to do it to see what everybody else does.
That's true. That's true. Good point.
Like right off the bat to get it over with, but I typically don't draft Bills anyways because it ruins my weekend sometimes.
This one's tough,
right? So I stay away from them. But who's your wide receiver you're taking?
I might take the Beasles. I might take Beasley. Yeah, and he quietly gets it done, and you can get him pretty late still in drafts as well. So I love his value.
Close to
but honestly, if I'm really going to want a receiver from Buffalo, I want Diggs. But if I can't get Diggs, I would take Cole Beasley. He's a solid wide receiver 3 or even a flex opportunity, especially depending on the matchup too. So give me some Cole Beasley.
Yeah, I like him too. And it's the Bills, I think, are one of those teams when you're looking at it, the drop off from the wide receiver 1 in drafts to all the other wide receivers on the team is crazy, right? Well, it's a huge drop before you get to Beasley and Gabe Davis, and even Emmanuel Sanders is like buried down there way late. So it's what?
So when did John Brown?
I think he's gonna have a phenomenal year. I actually think he might pull Denver, second year in Denver numbers in Buffalo this year.
Right, but I'm curious to see
this
when it was like Diggs and everybody else.
There's not a ton available.
I'm curious to see how that is going to change, and depending on what is going on with this lack of run game, making the run game more efficient, to me says we want to open things up for Josh Allen in the passing game, so we're going to get very creative. And I wonder if they're going to. Didn't they do quite a bit of 3 wide receivers on the field? Yeah, and it was to the Rams, right? One of those two, and that is interesting.
4 a ton.
That
they
were second most.
And
Dawson Knox, he's still with the Bills, right?
Yeah, Rams or Chiefs.
He had flashes. That's interesting as well. So it's curious. I'm curious.
Yeah,
I do like him too. I do. He's a big play guy.
Yeah, it's going to be weird to see because the Gabe Davis thing has been a big conversation, and a lot of people like Gabe Davis, right? And the numbers are there. Yeah, the numbers are there too. But I think his numbers that he had last season are probably where he would be this season. So, I mean, if you're cool with a guy that's going to be in the 50s, overall at the end of the season, that's probably where he's going to be. He might get you a couple weeks that you need it, but I don't know that he's going to be like a guy you could roll out there every week.
I mean, I think this is going to be between the.
So, what do you think about the Bills overall?
I think the only edge the Titans have right now is
going to be one of the teams back there,
and I honestly think that is it. My only other concern is that Josh Allen took such a huge, monumental step forward that was so impressive, and I think it caught so many teams by surprise. I'm wondering how many teams now are going to be catching up to his play. So he's going to have to work even harder to make that happen, which is why I'm glad they added such veteran pieces like Emmanuel Sanders on the squad. That makes me happy too. And I really want him to succeed. I'm like, I don't want to say a closet Bills fan because I'm not ashamed of it, but I am like, I'm a quiet Bills fan compared to y'all like eating mustard and jumping into tables and stuff. But I do like that. And I'm so impressed with Josh Allen. When you see a guy work so hard and see that hard work and that dedication and that grind pay off into becoming the best quarterback from last year, it's awesome to see. And I love that. I'm not so sure I see regression.
Oh, yeah. And to me, there's been a lot of talk about the regression that could happen. And sure, I mean, of course, I mean, things change. It's a different season. I have a hard time with it just because nothing offensively changed, right? Except for you. I feel like I love John Brown, but I feel like Emmanuel Sanders is a better route runner. And that's going to create a different space for everybody else on the field. I mean, so it's going to be exciting to see what you try to do.
Hey, who cares?
When they've got 4 guys on the field,
a touchdown is a touchdown. There's
going to be
a
back in there somewhere, right? They might they're a decoy probably, but whatever, but they're in there. So, all right. So finishing up here before we close out completely, I want to nerd out with you a little bit, find out some outside of not necessarily outside of football things, but some other things going on with you. So the nerding out session, I know you told me you're not a big sports book person, right? But
I love to read.
You
First
got a
of all, if
favorite
anyone
author?
doesn't know
What's
me,
what's
I'm
a
a
book
book
that you were just like, hey,
nerd.
if
I
you
can
want to read
read
a book
a
that's
very
cool
large
or
book in a
something, what do you
day, read very fast. I love to read. So I read a lot of genres. Recently, my latest kick has been Agatha Christie, all of her mystery. If anyone doesn't know who Agatha Christie is, do yourself a favor and go read some. She is just, there's a reason why she has sold more copies than like everyone in the world except for Shakespeare and the Bible. And then there's Agatha Christie. Isn't that crazy? I didn't know that until, I've got a collection of like all of her books are like down here. Yeah,
Wow.
and I love Jane Austen. That's a pretty classic
that's pretty
one
good
that
company.
I'll always go back to. I love Jane Austen very much. My favorite genre, though, is called urban fantasy. A little bit of a niche. I'm not sure if everyone's really heard of it, but it's a mixture of sci-fi, romance, horror, and humor, usually written in first person in like a post-apocalyptic world, if you will. So there's magic, there's vampires, there's shapeshifters, there's all sorts of fun stuff, and it's usually hilarious. A lot of action, crazy stuff going on, but my favorite author her name is Ilona Andrews, and it's a husband-wife writing team, and I literally read that book, and all of her series of books, and I LOL. I laugh out loud to the point where I am crying, and I can't read her stuff fast enough. It is absolutely fantastic. It's just brain candy. I can read it. I got my historical romances for my brain candy. Give me a book, and I am a happy lady. I know, it's sad. Like that, I'm a nerd. I'm a huge nerd, and I don't.
This is one of the most energetic that I've seen of anybody talking about books so far on this show. So
exactly.
Right, so that's great though. I like it. Well, that's then you're in the right place.
Man,
I think that's the Buffalo Nerd. That's what we're supposed to have on this show. So I love it. So let me ask you, what do you love about football? Yeah, like what brought Lauren to just dive into this
really, it's all about the competition, right? So I played sports growing up.
I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be really good at it.
I want to call myself an athlete, but I'm not anymore. I was back in the day, so I don't want to say I'm an athlete because like I can barely run up the stairs. Not the point. But I really love sports, and I really love watching sports. And when I went to the University of Missouri, I ended up falling in love with football even more than I already did. I have 2 older brothers, so of course they watched football a lot, and it was always part of your family traditions. And Thanksgiving, which was around my birthday, and Christmas. So it kind of revolves around family, revolves around competition, which I absolutely love. And for me, having 2 older brothers and growing up with them, I never really realized I was a girl until I was much older, because for me, it wasn't about gender. For me, it was about being better than them. In every single thing that they did, I wanted to do better. And that didn't matter to me. So especially when someone says, oh, you don't know about this, you're a girl. I'm like, hold my beer, watch this. Like that's kind of how I roll. And I love to write and I love to read, as we all know about this. So I have a Bachelor of Journalism from the University of Missouri. And combining that with my love of sports, you now have kind of this perfect storm of me being able to talk, which I obviously love to do, write, which I obviously love to do, be competitive, which I love to do. And what's been great about the fantasy industry is that people become very blind to the color of your skin, to your gender, to the way you look, to your height, to your weight. I mean, those things become invisible when you know what you're talking about, and you can foster and create a community with like-minded people who just want to talk about the same thing. Those other things don't matter. And this has created such a healthy space. I feel, I'm 37, so I've been through several different employment places before that have been very unhealthy and not fun. So as much as we like to complain about how Twitter is so evil, for me, it's been absolutely wonderful. Like making connections like with you, it's been phenomenal. I love doing this kind of stuff. And so it's this perfect thing. Everything about football really is brought me to this sport. So there's not really just one thing. That was a long-winded answer. Thank you. Very passionate.
Oh, I like it. I mean, that's a great answer.
I don't know how to be boring. I really like football.
Yeah, I know. I like it.
Fun.
That's what we're supposed to be getting out of this, right? I'm hoping is we get to find out some different things, why everybody's here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The way the ball flies through the air. It's cool. Yeah. It's really awesome, but I love it. It's usually family, and it's very cool though that the competitive side is what really is.
So funny about that too is that so even in my own leagues, like I'm in a lot of leagues.
So
I have evolved into not
and
caring
putting
how
your
my
brothers
own
behind you for
teams
sure.
do, because I
So-
work in this industry of helping other people with their lineups and helping other people draft and stuff. So I'll lose and I don't even care, because someone will text or message me or text me and be like, "I won." I'm like, yes, I'm so glad I told you to start so and so. And they're like, "Thank you." Like, that is so much more fulfilling to me than if I won and the people that are relying on me for
Right.
advice lost. Like, that's not fun. Like,
Right. No, that's cool though, and I think that's
Right.
good for people to know, right?
I
It's like,
care.
when people are doing this stuff, yes, it's an educated guess, like you've talked about, right? But it's not like you're just spitting stuff out to spit it out, right? It's like, it's things that you believe in and things that you're gonna do, right? And it's same things
Yeah.
that you would do yourself, right? I'm not telling people to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do. Like, yeah, don't draft Gabe Davis,
a lot.
and then every
I listen
draft
to a lot.
I
I
draft
actually
Gabe
work
Davis,
for the
right?
podcast.
That's not
I
like what I'm going to
listen
be doing either. So very cool.
There's that one. But
Do you have
okay, so
podcasts you
Fantasy
listen to?
Footballers is obviously one of my favorites. Fantasy Pros, those are
Yeah.
the two that I really first started listening to when I got into fantasy football.
Okay.
And I also work for those two places now, which is great. But there are so many good podcasts out there. Just go to your podcast platform and search fantasy football and just take a listen to as many as you can. I mean, you can pop them in your car, you can put them on your headphones. I mean, I do it while I'm working out or taking my dogs for a walk. There are so many out there. It's hard to name just one that I just love more than the other, because there's so many. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
especially meeting people and going on shows and stuff. You go back and you listen to people's stuff, right? You meet somebody, you chat with them, then it's like you go and listen. It's like I've had Dave on.
I mean,
he's
we'd
your
be
partner
here
in
until
crime on
like
a
next
2 Point Stance.
Saturday
So
if I
yesterday
listed off
I'm
all of
listening
my
and watching
favorite
the 2 Point
podcasts.
Stance, right? It's cool to hear other people's opinions and see what's going on, and of course let them do their shout outs. I like it. I mean, that's just how I am too. I bounce around, so it's just cool to hear. So finishing up on one more question. You got one play,
I have a
one
person
thing that's just like
I can't deal with.
in Lauren's side about football. It's just a flag that was thrown.
Joe
Something
Mixon.
terrible that happened. You just can't get
do
rid
it.
of.
I cannot
Okay.
do it.
No, this
I
is good.
can't do it.
Player
I'm all
is
about
absolutely
second
on the
chances.
table.
That is kind of my mantra. I have needed second
Oh.
chances, but I can't do it with Joe Mixon. Can't do it. So off the field stuff aside, that is part of why I dislike the player. But I'm going to focus just on fantasy. I am so sick of everybody hyping up Joe Mixon for him to keep repeating what he does every single year. I stay away. I tell everybody that I ever talk to stay away. Or if you do happen to draft him, have your expectations limited. Because if he succeeds them, great. If not, you don't want to hear me say I told you so. But Joe Mixon is one of those players that I get a lot of heat for disliking him, and that's okay. And I'm not saying that everyone else should dislike him simply because I do. It's just a personal thing for me. I can't get over his on-field production. Like one of his O-linemen went down in one game. I can't remember the specific one. And he was hurt. And Joe Mixon stood up and just looked at him and then just made this face and walked away. This is a guy who was blocking for you to get you yards. What are you doing? And maybe it was something I completely missaw. Maybe it was just because I have a bias. I don't know. But that it's just been those things over and over where I'm like, you know what? I can't force it anymore. I don't care for him. I feel so bad. I hate saying that kind of stuff, but immediately, if he's available in 4th, 5th, 6th round, I'm still not taking him. Yeah.
So he just gets
So
crossed
bad.
off immediately when the draft starts. He gets off.
I love Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow.
Actually, I don't think I have any mixed in.
And I feel bad. I hate to end it
right
like
now
that.
myself
I'm
either,
sorry,
now that I think
everybody.
about it.
For anyone like that who
that's a
does
good
like Joe
offense, I
Mixon,
think,
don't
too, or
hate me
has
so much.
potential
And
to be a good
I don't
offense,
hate you
right?
for liking him.
I think that's going to be a
It's
good
just a
team,
personal
so.
thing.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Well, and it's all roster construction, right? It's roster construction. If he's
Watch
the
it
guy
be
you're
like
looking for
RB1
in that
this
spot,
year,
then
and
make
I'm
him
just
your
like,
guy.
wah,
I mean,
wah.
you're just hearing an opinion
Sucks.
here that says
Nope.
don't do it, right? But if you don't want to, then if that's your guy, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna be the best ever, right? So I can't tell you how much I think thanks for coming on.
Oh my
Lauren.
gosh,
It was a blast. I know you're super busy.
I forgot what
you
it
guys
was.
are jamming out all the time.
I will be coming out with an article talking about the UDK for the fantasy
You got anything
footballers.
you want to shout out before we close
I have
out?
our weekly with Dave Kluge, the 2 Point Stance with football guys, but we have a special guest next week because Dave is going to be out of town. So I'm welcoming Adam Rank from the NFL Network as my co-host on 2 Point Stance next Wednesday, which is very exciting. The Fantasy Black Book is also another pre-draft, during your draft. That's me right there. So I'm in this. I talk about two divisions. I talk about the Saints in the NFC South. So that is super exciting. I also talk about the NFC West, talking about the Rams and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you'll be hearing from me. My work is spread out, so I have made this a little bit easier for myself, and it's all on my website, which is stepmomlauren.com. So I try to update that once a week to get all the new content that I've been working on there, and do a lot of video work for fantasy pros, and it's crazy. It's insane, and I'm excited. I can't wait for football.
So yeah, I was going to bring that up, but since you mentioned him that he's going to be doing the show with you, I did see that you got quite the little shout out this week from Mr. Adam Rank, highlighting about how kick-ass you've been doing, and that's pretty cool. I mean, if you're in the fantasy space, I'm pretty sure you know who Adam Rank is. I mean, when the guy's name is Rank,
agreed.
I mean, it's like he's got to be part of it, right? I mean, like there's no way that he's not part of it. So that's very cool. Not that Dave isn't worth to listen to on the 2 Point Stance, but you should definitely check out the 2 Point Stance. It's a great show, and if Rank's going to be on there with Lauren, it's going to be a blast, I'm sure. So make sure you check that out. Check out the Black Book too. Very cool. Tons of information in here, even just like about rookies and things like that. A couple strategies. Yeah, it gets updated. Absolutely. And the author Joe too, like you can sign up for an extra little thing if you purchase the book. Go to page 3. You can get stuff sent straight to your inbox.
He's such a hard worker.
Updated rankings and things like that, which came out just this last week, and then he immediately had to send it right back out with updated rankings because Julio Jones got traded. Yeah. So it does get updated. I can confirm it does get updated, and I believe the first update is already available on Amazon now too, right? With the June, I believe the June update is in there already as well. So very cool. Thank you very much for being here, Lauren. Everybody listening in, obviously go to stepmomlauren.com. That's where you'll find her. Just head there. That'll get you everywhere else you need to go. For everything I'm up to, head over to the Buffalo Nerd. Appreciate you guys listening. Love you guys. Be safe out there. We'll see you next week.
You just listen to the Buffalo Nerd Sports Podcast. Make sure you leave a review and subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll see you next time. Leg out!